Hi, welcome to Varsity Maine Live. I am Travis Lazarczyk from the Portland Press Herald, and this is our debut show. Thanks for joining us. If you're with us live, you can see the comment section over on the right side of your screen, and feel free to send any comments or questions, and we'll try to get to some if we can. I'm joined this week by my colleague from the Portland Press Herald, Steve Craig, my colleague from the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel, Drew Bonifant, and our guest this week is Cony High School head football coach, B.L. Lippert. Everybody, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Coach, we'll start with you. You guys kind of had an off week you didn't expect and didn't really want last week when, unfortunately, Mount Blue wasn't able to play you guys due to the COVID-19 outbreak. What did you guys do to just stay in shape and get ready to play Brunswick this week?
Yeah, it was so late in the week, we really couldn't alter plans at all. So on Friday, we found out we were going to be delayed because the field conditions weren't ideal after the big rainstorm Thursday night, and then went into the weekend preparing to play Monday night, and then found out Sunday night at 9 o'clock that that game wasn't going to happen either because of a COVID outbreak at Mount Blue. So quickly transitioned our, practice plans to Brunswick, and then got ready for them. So not ideal, not, unlike something that other teams are dealing with around the state, but having gone through it now, it's just not a fun situation, and there's not one person to blame, nothing to blame other than just the circumstances. But had a feeling like last year where everything was out of our control. We did everything right, ready to play a game, and all of a sudden something that had never happened until last year is rearing its ugly head yet again. So not a fun week, but hopefully everyone else in the state enjoyed their weekend, and we get to play again on Saturday against Brunswick.
Coach, how did you try and deal with it with your kids? I mean, what was the message you tried to send to them?
It's interesting that I think they're so resilient from what they experienced last year. I think that they were like, okay, no game. Now we're going to look ahead to Brunswick. And, we sent a message out to them Sunday night at 9 o'clock and had a few kids, write to me immediately, a few in the morning, and said, what happened. And at that point, I didn't know all the details of what had happened at Mount Blue. So I just told them what I knew. And like I said, I think, kids in general are more resilient than coaches. We take things a little harder and for a little longer. And in this case, all the preparation, we're ready to go. And, I'm sure they want to play, especially the seniors, but they said, okay, hey, that's a tough break. And hopefully, we play them maybe later on down the road or in the playoffs or whatever the case might be. So they were surprisingly not okay with it, but, bounced back pretty quickly and shifted their attention elsewhere.
Coach, what's the biggest downside to losing a game right now at this point in the season? Is it that, you missed that opportunity to kind of knock the rust off and get back into the football field after missing last year? It's just another opportunity to really get your legs out under you for the big part of the season? Or is it kind of like, people always talk about a bye not always being the best thing for a team that's in a rhythm, and you had that win over Skowhegan, you're feeling pretty good after that, and then to be shut down like that, what's the biggest downside to it?
I think at a year, like this year where we missed out on the 2020 season, we have so many new people in so many new spots that we don't know who can play where. And so we've got a scrimmage, an exhibition, and game one under our belt. And every week is so critical for those kids developing, getting more experience. Particularly this week, our quarterback broke his thumb in the second quarter against Skowhegan and played the remainder of the game, but now he's out. So we have a new starting quarterback, Davin Flynn, who's a sophomore, who's, every opportunity to get on the field is only going to help him. So, missing out on that opportunity to play. If it were later in the year when you're a little, banged up, a little nicked up, maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world. But, week two on the heels of a big win, you want to kind of keep that momentum going. So not ideal timing. And like, we have really two returning starters from the 2019 season. So we really want to see these kids in action as much as we can, and missing out on a game in week two really kind of limits our ability to evaluate, who can play where.
Coach, do you have an update on your home field? We know it's kind of still under construction with the field turf going in. You guys have been playing at Messalonskee, playing this week again at Messalonskee. How's that coming along, and how is your team adjusting to playing all their games on the road so far?
Yeah, again, they're pretty resilient, that's for sure. We thought it was going to be ready. Our last two home games are week 6 and 7 against Windham and Lawrence. And it really comes down to the turf is ready. It's in North Carolina. It's got to be shipped up here, but they don't want to do it too far in advance of the crew that's coming in to install that turf. So they're finishing up a project in another state and hopefully going to start that maybe at the end of next week. I would say it's probably less than a 50% chance our week 6 game with Windham is able to be played on that turf, but we're quite hopeful that our week 7, which will be senior night, would be against Lawrence on the turf, ideally. So like everything else, all the production, everything's been delayed with, ordering team T-shirts. Those were 2 weeks later than normal. So everything's a little bit delayed, and we'll be ready to play on the field whenever it's completed. And we're very excited about, the prospects of having turf in Augusta.
BL, I saw a tweet that you sent out maybe a week ago, and I think this was before you personally had to miss a game, where it was like the MPA should look into extending the season. Is that even doable with football? Because clearly you can't really play 2 games in a week with this sport, but does it then end up impacting the winter sports and they get impacted again?
Yeah, most of the things I tweet out, I don't really put a lot of thought into, so I sometimes can't be held accountable for those things. But
Okay.
yeah, I don't know why we couldn't just say football gets all of November. Basketball starts December 1st. That essentially extends everything, 2 weeks if my math is right. And football, you can't play 2 games in a week. You're right. Basketball, you can play 3 or 4 if you had to. So if they had to kind of cram that season in or even extend it past February break, I know the MPA wouldn't want to do that, but we missed out on an entire season. So basketball missed out on, maybe a regular tournament last winter. And basketball, wrestling missed out on their entire season. So we're all feeling like, we haven't had a normal season in a while, but football's got unique circumstances. We can't cancel a game on Friday and play on, Monday and then Thursday and Saturday like other sports can. So I just threw that out there, thinking that maybe having missed an entire season, it give kids a chance to play. And with all the turf fields now around the state, playing on November 28th might be pretty cold, but the field conditions will be fine because we have enough turf fields around, including in Augusta, hopefully by November 28th, to host a regional championship or a state championship if we need to find locations at those later dates. So I just threw it out there, because like I said, it's starting to feel like 2020 where we're missing out on games and it's not a good feeling. It's not a fun message to relay to your team and your parents. So I threw it out there hoping that maybe somebody would see it. And apparently you saw it, Steve, and I'm not sure
any
how much
traction. Have you gotten any response?
No, not really. No, nobody listens to me really. So you're the first one. I'm glad you read that.
Okay.
Confirms that I do have a following there, but I don't know who will see. If it becomes problematic and teams are missing multiple games, I know in our league it's been typically 6 out of the 9 teams make the playoffs, and we voted to make it 8 out of the 9. So there'd be no buys, because how do you compare a team that maybe goes 2-4 because they missed out on 2 games with a team that went 3-5 and didn't miss any games? I'm not sure how the heel points really sort of rectify that issue. So by extending it, having 8 out of 9 make it, one team doesn't make it, but you could argue if you're the 9th seed, maybe you don't deserve it. So things like that have happened across the state to try to make sure nobody gets squeezed out of the playoffs that otherwise would have made it if not for some COVID cancellations. So we'll see what comes of it. Like everything with COVID, it's constantly evolving. So I put that out there, and who knows? I doubt it'll take get any traction, but I was hoping.
Do your players, talk about what's going on around the state much in terms of games that are getting canceled and moved up and stuff like that? Do you notice how that affects their mood and their spirits, or are they pretty good about just focusing on Cony and Cony only?
Yeah, they would notice things within our league, I think. Mount Blue, Falmouth getting canceled, they noticed. And so that, obviously affects, heel points and things of that nature. So I'm not sure. I haven't heard a lot about, if a Class D game or an 8-man game was postponed or changed. I haven't heard much about that, but they would pay attention to things in our league. And, like kids that have gone to camps and play other sports against other, they have friends on other teams. I'm sure they're talking to them about it, but it's not something they bring up with us at practice very often.
Coach, let's actually talk about football for a minute instead of all the peripheral stuff. What can you tell us about this Brunswick team you're playing on Saturday?
Yeah, Brunswick's Brunswick. They are wing T, Dan Cooper coach team, and really physical, athletic. He's got his 2 sons are now seniors, Wes and Dalton. So that's your fullback and kind of halfback in the wing T. The high pressure defense. They're going to play, a 4 or 5 front and bring some, pressure with the linebackers. And I was just talking to our staff the other day. I mean, not much has changed on our staffs over the last 15 years. A couple of different coaches here and there, but it's still Cony Brunswick. We are in the spread, throwing the ball a fair amount at the time. They're in the wing T, really, trying to, jam it down your throat. And that's pretty cool for, 15 years. The names have changed, their jerseys have changed, but, there's 2 styles and the 2 brands have always kind of helped to define, PTCB. Those 2 teams are pretty much, diametrically opposed in terms of philosophies, but have had some success. So always fun to play Coach Cooper in Brunswick. And we've gotten their number a few times in the playoffs, but they've gotten our number too. So it's been a great rivalry, and hopefully Saturday that continues.
Okay. BL Lippert from Cony High School, we thank you for joining us on this inaugural Varsity Maine Live. Good luck this weekend. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Coach.
BL.
Okay, now we're going to move on to Athletes of the Week. We're going to try to pick a player, an athlete from every sport here in the fall. Run down, maybe say a word or two about a few of them. We'll start with Golf, Ruby Haylock of Levitt shot a 39 Monday at Rockland Golf Club to beat the Oceanside team 8-1, help her Levitt Hornets. There she is, playing in the Women's Maine Amateur this summer. Jayden Flaker from Scarborough High football for the second week in a row, the senior. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown, had a 65-yard touchdown, and lost this week to Bonnie Eagle, had a 91-yarder last week, in week one, I should say, against South Portland. He looks like one of those guys who's going to be dangerous every time he touches the ball. It seems like Scarborough's offense really got moving the more he got involved and got the touches. Boys soccer, Hayden Fletcher from Monmouth. He recorded back-to-back hat tricks with 3 goals and a 5-0 win over Winthrop, and then 3 more and a 7-3 win over Oak Hill. For girls soccer, we have Emily Harper from Maranacook. Emily scored 7 goals and a 14-0 win over Cony, Drew.
Yeah, she's been dynamic to start this season. She's up to 17 goals in 5 games, scored 3 today against Gardner. And the most interesting thing about that story is she's coming off of an ACL injury. She was Class C Player of the Year 2 years ago, didn't play last year, and she's come back and been as good as she ever was. And Maranacook's undefeated. They're rolling.
Another boys soccer player from Lewiston, Shafi Abraham, he scored 4 goals Tuesday in Lewiston's win over Oxford Hills in an 11-0 win, I should say. Cross country, Sarah McClellan from Marshwood. She won a 4-team meet against Cheverus, Wyndham, and Thornton, and with the state's best 5K time of the week, 19 minutes and 35 seconds. Another boys soccer player, Devin Impinga, I hope I got that name right, from South Portland. He scored 2 goals in a 4-0 win over Thornton. What can you tell us about him, Steve?
Well, I haven't seen Devin play, but according to Brian Hoy, his head coach at South Portland, he told me in the preseason, a lot of guys aren't going to know who he is or know his name in the early part of the season, but they will by the end of the season. And considering this is his second 2-goal game, and South Portland's now 2-1, the first they beat Cheverus in the season opener, a solid team. I think we're starting to get to know Devin, and I think it's Devin Impinga.
My mistake. I apologize.
That's all right. Yeah, that's all right.
With my last name, you got to get kind of stuff right.
What Brian Hoy told me, so we could both be wrong.
Yeah. All right. 2 field hockey players, both from Winthrop, Maddie Perkins and Bella Littler. They each scored a pair of goals in a win over Halldale, and then added 3 goals and assists in a win over Telstar. And finally, one more football player, Matt Doucette from Oxford Hills. He scored 2 touchdowns, one on a 10-yard run and another on a 37-yard catch when the Vikings beat Sanford last week. So that's our week 1 athletes of the week. Gentlemen, we have Varsity Maine polls. Let's talk about some of the teams near the top of those, starting with boys soccer. Steve, Scarborough picking up 4 of the first-place votes, followed by Lewiston, Falmouth, Yarmouth, and Brunswick. And we had a Southern Maine coach with a milestone win.
Right. Mike Haggerty won his 300th boys soccer game at Yarmouth earlier this week, or maybe it was later last week. But anyway, congratulations, Mike. Certainly a first-rate coach, first-rate program. Mike had actually already gone over 300 wins as a coach because he, back in his early days, he coached the Deering girls team for a couple of seasons, maybe 3. I'm not sure how many, but he had 27 wins with the Deering girls. So, and it's probably worth noting that Mike now joins. There's several other active coaches with more than 300 boys wins, led by Peter Gardner at Richmond, who was well over 500. Just keeps rolling along. I've never had the opportunity to meet Peter, but now I want to, because I guess he coached at Brunswick and was a teacher and administrator there, and then retired, and now he's been at Richmond for about 8 years. Others, David Halligan, Mark Diaz at Scarborough, Brandon Sawway, who crossed that threshold, I believe, in 2020, are active coaches with 300 boys wins.
Congratulations to all. It's tough to stay in coaching that long, much less be that good at it. So
yes.
Let's move on to the girls soccer poll. Scarborough number 1 with 4 first-place votes, followed by Camden Hills with 1, and Cape Elizabeth 1 picking up a first-place vote, and then Brunswick and Cheverus. So a lot of the SMAA teams haven't really started to play each other yet, so I feel like that deep league is going to kind of sort itself out here later in the season. But then Camden Hills, coming off of 4 straight state titles in 16, 17, 18, and 19, and then having last year off, obviously. So it'll be neat to see how they shake up in the north with Brunswick. Moving on to field hockey, we have Skowhegan with 5 of the 6 first-place votes, followed by Scarborough, Cheverus, Massabesic, and Lawrence. Drew, Skowhegan just keeps rolling, even though right now they're on a pause for COVID-19. Yeah,
you can't really put anybody else in that top position until Skowhegan gives a reason for somebody else to be there. Although Paul Dowdy has said throughout the season that her team is young. She doesn't have.
She says that every year.
Yeah. Well, this year there's actually the roster backs it up. There aren't any either aren't any senior starters or only a couple of senior starters. It's a really young junior, sophomore heavy team, and they're off to a good start. They're playing just like Skowhegan always does. But she has said that this has been a different season, just not having the leadership to start off with that she's had in years past. She compared it to the team from either I think it was 2019, maybe 2018, the Bria Kennedy team that had seniors and upperclassmen and experienced starters all throughout. This is a different type of team, but they're certainly playing the same way.
Okay. Finally, our football poll. Thornton Academy with 6 first-place votes. They're number 1. Bonnie Eagle with 1 first-place vote. They're number 2, followed by Oxford Hills, Marshwood, and Scarborough. Steve, this Oxford Hills team's coming off a couple impressive wins. Are they ready to kind of join that upper echelon of Class A this season?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think we'll find out not this week, but next when they play Bonnie Eagle. I'm glad you brought up Oxford Hills because they've really posted 2 very impressive wins out of the gate. And everybody in the preseason was saying this will be a team to watch. Mark Soren, their head coach, felt like they've made those little steps and would have been really good in 2020, he felt, but he was confident this year that they could. But he himself would say we're not, until we beat, essentially, especially I think this year, until they beat a Bonnie Eagle or a Thornton, they're still that one step below, but maybe this is the year. And they did beat Bonnie Eagle a couple of years ago in the regular season when the Scots were a bit down and had a lot of injuries, but still they beat them. And some of those kids, my mind is right. I think those kids that would have been freshmen that year are seniors this year.
It feels like Oxford Hill's been building to this for a while.
Yeah. Another one, just if I can throw this in.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I'm curious about will be this week's Bangor at Scarborough game.
Sure.
Bangor is also 2-0, also has dominated in both of their wins. Scarborough at 1-1 has certainly played has played a little bit tougher opponents. Losing to Bonnie Eagle is no shame, but Bangor also is seen as a team that's possibly on the rise, and they're 2-0, and if they can control Jayden Flaker, limit his touches. I really don't know. That's why I'm interested in that game.
It's still kind of early, but
to show us have they actually moved up.
Right. That's as good a way as any to go into our games of the week. Drew, a couple big ones in the Pine Tree Conference, which is Class B North.
Yeah, 2 in particular. Wyndham and Lawrence is going to be a good gauge of kind of the power structure there. We've started to see that Lawrence looks like they could be a cut above the competition right now, but Wyndham is another team that a lot of people projected to be in that discussion. And so after they got a big win over Skowhegan, Wyndham will give them another test to show just kind of how much of a gap there is, if there is a gap. And the other game is one BL was just talking about, Cony Brunswick. It's 2 rivals. They didn't get a chance to play in 2019, but they played 4 times combined in 2017 and 18. So these teams have come to know each other. Their coaches, at least, have come to know each other. It's a matchup of different styles. Cony's got the wide open passing game, and Brunswick's more tighter wing tee, things like that. And so it's going to be a good matchup. And the winner of that game will be really in the middle of this Class B race, while the whoever is on the losing end will be sitting at either 1-1 for Cony or 1-2 for Brunswick, and be kind of looking to make their way back up.
Those 2 games will give us a chance to make a sort of an observation of what happens when you have an unexpected week off. Mm-hmm. Does Cony benefit from it? It sounded like BL's worried because he's got a different quarterback, but Brunswick had that second game. They got handled pretty easily by Wyndham, but came back the next week, won. Mm-hmm. They've progressed, right? And then it's the same thing with Wyndham now, which looked great in week 1. They didn't want to take a week off, but they had to. So, does that impact them going into week 3?
And Lawrence coming off a tight win. They were ahead 20-0 at Skowhegan. Then Skowhegan comes back, ties it up. Lawrence wins it on a late score. So will that help them?
That type of win can do wonders for a team, down the road, where they've now experienced that close game and Wyndham hasn't yet.
Yeah. And Steve, you've got a big game.
I won't be able to make a hard and fast, like this is what happens when you have a week off.
Right.
But it is a fascinating subplot, and it's one that's unfortunately going to continue throughout the year.
Yeah. And Steve, you got a game Friday night. Go ahead, Drew, real quick.
I was going to just a quick point about what Steve said about the close win. John Hersom said that exact point. It's good to know this early in the season whether your team can win that kind of game, and they show that they can.
Yeah. And talking about teams that haven't played, well, really yet. Steve, you've got a game in Class C South with Levitt, who hasn't played, going to Wells.
Right, and Wells is coming off what, to me anyway, seemed like a shocking loss, because Westbrook was 0-8 in 2019 and wasn't good the year before that. And, Wells is Wells. They're used to being in the title hunt. And they went up to Westbrook and lost 20-7. But they've had, which normally you'd say, oh, wow, that doesn't bode well for now. They got to play Levitt. But they've played 2 weeks in a row, and Levitt hasn't played at all.
Right.
But Levitt's had 2.5, as Tim Roach told me, Levitt's had 2.5 weeks to prepare for us, because they knew pretty early on that they're not only they'd already lost their first game, and then knew pretty early on they were going to lose their second game because of just the teams they were playing, MCI the first week and Herman the next one. And Herman's not playing again this week. They're going for their third week without a game. But not to digress. I think it'll be very interesting, and it's a lot like how you guys described the Brunswick Cony matchup, where Levitt certainly has very multiple diverse offense, likes to do lots and lots of motion, has at least in the past few years thrown the ball well, and Wells is going to try and run its wing tee and pretty much pound you.
Okay.
And Wells is a great place to go. I'm looking forward to that game. For me, I think that'll really feel like football is back, and hopefully we can all at least experience that most weeks, that there's a feeling of football is back.
Okay, very quickly, I'm going to bring up a girls soccer game next Tuesday. Bangor and Brunswick playing to see who could maybe take control of Class A North along with Cape Elizabeth. Okay, that's going to do it. We thank everyone for tuning in to this first week of Varsity Maine Live. We'll be back next Thursday and every Thursday throughout the fall at 8 o'clock. Please check out our websites at pressherald.com, centralmaine.com, Times Record, Lewis and Son Journal, all the Maine Today platforms. And for Drew, for Steve, for BL, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time on Varsity Maine Live.